Hi everyone, my name is Zuhur Jishi and today I will be presenting my paper on the impact of a mindfulness-based intervention on weight status among the adolescent population. The objectives of my paper were to look at the issue of obesity. Obesity has been on a rise among the adolescent population, which prompted me to look into this topic and also prompted researchers and health professionals to find interventions that they can implement in order to help individuals develop healthier relationships with food. The objective of this paper is also to assess the effectiveness of a mindfulness-based program on weight loss among adolescents between the ages of 11 to 19 years through the measurement of body mass index as an outcome. Obesity is a worldwide epidemic, and the body mass index for adolescents falling above the 95th percentile has doubled, and as the longitudinal Bogalusa heart study showed that the average body weight increased by 3.4 kilograms for 5 to 14-year-old children in comparison to also an increase of 5.7 kilograms for individuals, adolescents basically between the ages of 15 to 17 years old from the years 1973 to 1994, and those numbers are alarming. There are risk factors definitely that increase the likelihood of obesity, such as not having a safe environment, inability for individuals to go outside and to engage in physical activity due to unsafe neighborhoods. Diet is another factor, genetics, and the correlated comorbidities could be heart disease, sleep apnea, elevated blood lipid profiles, and the list goes on. This paper, as mentioned, looks into mindfulness. So what is mindfulness? Mindfulness is the basic human ability to be consciously present and aware of what one is doing without giving regard to the surroundings. So the person focuses on themselves. Mindful eating, which is part of mindfulness, is the practice that involves meditation and the focus on um, the sensual experiences of the five senses, basically sight, sound, smell, touch, and taste. The self awareness that stems from mindfulness helps reduce mindless eating and unhealthy cravings, as well as impulsive eating, which definitely in turn positively impacts weight loss efforts. The research question of this paper is, what is the evidence that mindfulness-based dietary intervention is effective in body mass index value among adolescents aged 11 to 19 years? The methodology for this paper was as follows. A systematic approach following the guidelines of the AND manual was used to answer the question, and the databases that were used are PubMed, ScienceDirect, and the University of New England Library. To conduct the research, a certain set of keywords with Boolean cooperators were inputted into the databases. Those keywords were mindfulness and weight loss and adolescence, mindfulness and obesity, mindfulness and adolescence. As you can see, a different variation that helped yield the results that were found for this paper. Now, in order to be able to accept certain studies and exclude others, there was a certain set of inclusion criteria and exclusion criteria was developed. For the inclusion criteria, the age was 11 to 19 years, the population was adolescents, the health status was overweight or obesity, the setting was schools and homes, study design Randomized controlled trials and pilot studies were accepted. The outcome being measured was BMI, so studies that looked into BMI were considered, even if they looked into other outcomes, as long as BMI was one of them, they were considered. Year range was 2008 to 2019, and the dropout rate was less than 20% to increase the credibility of the results and the consistency in order to be able to develop an end conclusion at the end. The language was English, and the authorship, if an author was included in similar studies, then only the most recent study was used. For the exclusion criteria, basically it was the opposite of the inclusion criteria. For the study design, meta analysis and reviews were excluded, and any paper that was not in English was also excluded. 7 studies were accepted for this paper. However, in detail, we are going to discuss 4 of them for this presentation. The first one was looking at the effectiveness of an after-school mindfulness intervention on adolescent body mass index and weight. The population consisted of 37 females with a body mass index greater than or equal to the 90th percentile. It took place in a high school in southwestern United States, and the time of the intervention was 6 weeks. So basically, there were 2 groups, a mindful eating intervention group and a usual care control group. The intervention group received 6 weekly 90-minute sessions with a focus on meditation, eating skills, and satiety cues. They learned about gaining control over their eating, emotions, and factors that make them overeat. So basically, after the intervention, the BMI in the mindfulness group declined significantly by 1.1 kilograms per meter squared, while the BMI in the control group significantly increased by 0.72 kilogram per meter squared. This only shows that the results were statistically significant and that a mindfulness based intervention is indeed effective in reducing body mass index values among overweight adolescents. For this paper, the grade that was given based on the AND manual was positive. The second study evaluated the effectiveness of an intervention with a mindfulness component on weight loss. The population was adolescents between the ages of 18 to 19 years old, both males and females, and the total sample size was 39. The time of the intervention was 10 weeks, and it took place in Puerto Rico. So the study consisted of 2 groups, the intervention and the control group. Students in the control group received basic standard care, including educational material on diet and physical activities, while participants in the intervention group participated in 10 weekly support groups of 75 minutes each, promoting healthy dietary and lifestyle changes, as well as increasing mindfulness to help with eating habits. The results were also statistically significant, whereby the body mass index value decreased by 0.8 units at 10 weeks and 1.2 units decreased at 6 months, as opposed to a lower or a lesser increase among individuals in the control group, thus showing that a mindfulness based intervention is effective in decreasing the body mass index value among overweight adolescents. For this study, the grade that was given based on the AND manual was also positive. The grade that was given for the study was a neutral because the control group was not uh, discussed thoroughly, and the intervention time was kind of vague. There were general guidelines that suggested that the intervention time consisted of 30 sessions, but there was no set time, so this affected the grade that was given for this study. The fourth study that was selected for this presentation looked or evaluated the effect of a family-based mindfulness intervention. The population consisted of 22 adolescents between the ages of 14.5 to 17.9 with a BMI greater than or equal to the 95th percentile. It took place in southwestern United States and the intervention time was 12 weeks. Both the intervention and control groups received sessions on dietary counseling. However, the mindfulness group received over four 90-minute sessions by physician and trained mind-body therapist. The participants learned about mindful eating principles, satiety cues, and they learned more about serving sizes and eating quickly. The results of the study showed that BMI values in the mindfulness group were higher at 12 weeks and 24 weeks, but this increase in BMI was also seen in the control group as well. However, this increase in BMI could easily be attributed to growth spurts since adolescents tend to grow during this period. The grade given to the study was a positive. So for this paper, 34 articles were identified, yet 10 were excluded for various reasons, such as being meta-analysis or reviews, or having an age group that is older than the target population, focusing on holistic health coaching instead of mindfulness, among different other reasons that did not meet the inclusion criteria that were initially set. The number of articles, as mentioned, that were reviewed and which met all the inclusion criteria were 7. 6 out of the 7 accepted studies showed that participating in a mindfulness intervention led to improved BMI values and improved dietary habits, basically lower BMI values, indicating that the adolescents did in fact lose weight. 1 out of the 7 studies, however, showed an increase in BMI after the mindfulness intervention. So as you can see here in this chart, BMI decreased after mindfulness intervention was true in 6 studies. BMI did not change after the mindfulness intervention was true in no studies. BMI increased after the mindfulness intervention was true in 1 study. As a conclusion for the studies reviewed in this paper, evidence definitely supports that a mindfulness-based intervention is in fact an effective tool in lowering body mass index values. 5 of the 7 studies included in this review showed statistically significant results for lower BMI values, thus indicating that a mindfulness-based intervention with mindfulness components such as mindful eating did lead to lower weight and thus lower body mass index values among adolescents struggling with weight. One study showed that mindfulness-based intervention was linked to better habits, such as increased engagement in physical activity, which can in turn induce weight loss and lead to lower BMI values and improve the health of adolescents. As mentioned, only one study showed the opposite, which was an increase in BMI. In this study, however, retention rate was very high. It was a 93.1% to be precise, suggesting that even though findings did not support or link that a mindfulness-based intervention positively impacted BMI, adolescents were actually interested in this specific intervention and attended the session successfully. And since the other studies that we mentioned show a positive impact of a mindfulness-based intervention on dietary habits and BMI values, This could, in fact, prove that this study would lead to better habits among this certain population. This paper definitely had its strengths and limitations. These strengths definitely included the fact that the interventions were intensive. They consisted of mindfulness components that involved satiety cues, mindful eating, and self awareness. However, like any paper and studies have limitations, 5 studies indicated that sample size was a limitation and that future research with larger sample sizes could yield more significant results. Follow up time was also a limitation, since researchers said that a longer follow up time could have definitely helped them evaluate the intervention effectiveness, especially that adolescents tend to go through growth spurts, which may affect weight trends and thus the findings of the study. Baseline characteristics were also a limitation in 2 studies. One study that randomized participants into an intervention group stated that the adolescents in the intervention group initially had higher BMI values than the participants in the control, which could have explained why they lost more weight. Out of the 7 studies that were included, only one pilot study did not have a control group, and therefore there was no control to compare findings to, which may have also affected result significance. The implications for future research and practice are as follows. After conducting an extensive research on different databases, research on mindfulness among the adolescent population is not much and tends to look at behavior changes and disordered eating such as binge eating, bulimia, or anorexia, but not much on weight loss. So, future research should definitely look at mindfulness based intervention and its impact on weight loss, especially since, as mentioned, the rates of obesity are on a rise, and the fact that the studies that were included in this paper showed a weight loss trend um, among the adolescent population struggling with weight. This definitely calls for the importance of conducting further extensive research to look into this intervention and its impact on the adolescent population. Future studies should definitely address the limitations that are mentioned in this paper to be able to produce consistent and reliable results regarding the implementation of a mindfulness based intervention to help adolescents struggling with weight and to help them acquire healthy habits that could impact their weight status and their health status, not only now but for the long term. Those are my references, and thank you everyone for listening to my presentation, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.